The Grand Coliseum floated in the darkness of space like a metal moon. It was the largest arena in the known galaxy. Ships from 100 different worlds came here to watch fighters battle for glory and honor. Today, the seats were full. Over 2 million aliens had come to watch the tournament. Jake Collins sat alone in the small preparation room. He wrapped old cloth tape around his knuckles slowly and carefully. The tape was from Earth. He had brought it with him when he left his home planet 3 years ago. It was worn and gray now, but he still used it before every fight. Jake was 32 years old. He had brown hair cut short and a scar on his chin from an old battle. His body was covered with smaller scars too. Each one told a story. Back on Earth, he had been a military captain. He had fought in wars that most people tried to forget. When Earth joined the Galactic Concord, Jake found a new purpose. He became a fighter in the arena circuit. Most aliens thought humans were weak. They were small compared to other species. They had no claws, no armor, no poison. Their teeth were flat and useless for combat. When other species looked at humans, they saw soft creatures that should have died long ago. Jake knew what they thought. He did not care. A voice came through the small speaker in his ear. It was Emma Ward, his crew chief and oldest friend. She watched everything from the control station above the arena. "The crowd is big today," Emma said. "Lots of important people in the royal boxes. The Valoran princess is here with her friends." Jake nodded but said nothing. He finished wrapping his hands and stood up. The room was cold, but he did not feel it. His mind was already in the arena. Far above the preparation rooms, Princess Lyra sat in the finest viewing box in the Colosseum. She was young for a Valoran, only 200 years old. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes were silver, like polished metal. She wore a dress made of fabric that changed colors when she moved. Jewels hung from her neck and wrists. Around her sat other young nobles from the great houses of the Valoran Empire. They laughed and drank expensive wine while servants brought them food. For them, the tournament was entertainment. A fun way to spend an afternoon. The large screen in their box showed images of the fighters who would compete today. When Jake's picture appeared, Lyra pointed at it and laughed loudly. "Look at this creature," she said to her friends. "This is what the humans send? This is their champion?" The other nobles laughed with her. One of them, a tall male with dark blue skin, shook his head in amusement. "I have seen stronger animals in our zoos," he said. Lyra smiled. "Soft skin, dull teeth, no natural armor. He will be dead before the second round. I promise you." She raised her glass, and her friends cheered. None of them thought for a moment that the human could survive. Why would they? Humans were new to the galaxy. They came from a small planet in an unimportant part of space. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel a few decades ago. To the Valorans, they were children playing at being adults. Down in the crew station, Emma heard everything through the broadcast. Her jaw became tight with anger. She had worked with Jake for 3 years. She had seen him fight creatures that would give nightmares to most people. She knew what he could do. "Jake," she said through the comlink, "the princess is making fun of you, saying you'll be dead by round 2. Jake was walking toward the arena entrance now. The sound of the crowd grew louder with each step. He could feel the vibration of 2 million voices through the metal floor. "Let her talk," he said calmly. "Every species underestimates us," Emma continued. "Every single one. They look at us and see weakness. They don't understand." Jake reached the entrance gate. Bright light poured through the gaps in the metal. The noise was almost painful now. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "They'll learn," he said. The gate opened. Jake walked into the arena, and the crowd reacted. Most of them laughed or made sounds of confusion. The human looked so small on the vast fighting floor. The arena was made of white stone that glowed with soft light. It was beautiful and deadly at the same time. His first opponent was already waiting. The creature was called a Creth warrior. It stood 8 feet tall on thick legs. Its body was covered with natural bone plates that could stop most weapons. Its arms ended in hands with 4 clawed fingers, each claw as long as a knife. The Creth had small red eyes that looked at Jake with hunger. The crowd cheered for the Creth. They knew this fight would be short. The human would die, and they would see blood on the white stone. This was what they came for. Princess Lyra leaned forward in her seat, smiling. She wanted to see the human's face when he realized he was going to die. The signal for battle sounded. It was a deep horn that echoed through the entire Colosseum. The Creth charged immediately. It was fast for its size, covering the distance between them in seconds. Its clawed hand swung toward Jake's head with enough force to cut through metal. Jake moved. He did not try to block the attack. He did not try to run. He simply stepped to the side at the last moment, letting the claws pass inches from his face. The movement was small and precise. The Creth swung again and again. Each attack was powerful enough to kill, but none of them connected. Jake moved like water, flowing around each strike. He was watching the creature carefully, studying how it moved, learning its patterns. 30 seconds passed. The crowd grew quiet. This was not what they expected. Princess Lyra stopped smiling. Her silver eyes narrowed as she watched the human dance around the massive warrior. The Creth was getting angry now. It roared and launched a fierce combination of attacks. Both arms swinging, claws cutting through the air from every direction. It was a killing pattern that had ended hundreds of lives. Jake ducked under one swing, stepped around another, and then he saw it. There was a small gap in the bone armor, just below the Creth's jaw. The armor plates did not quite meet there. It was a weakness that most fighters would never notice. At 45 seconds, Jake moved forward instead of back. The Creth was not expecting this. Its arms were still extended from its last attack. It had no defense ready. Jake's fist struck the gap beneath the jaw. The hit was perfect. It was not about strength. It was about knowing exactly where to strike. His knuckles connected with a nerve cluster that controlled the Creth's entire body. The giant warrior dropped to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. It did not move. It was not dead, but it would not wake up for many hours. The arena fell completely silent. 2 million aliens stared at the human standing over the fallen Creth. No one made a sound. No one could believe what they had just seen. In the royal box, Princess Lyra's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Her friends were frozen in shock. The tall noble who had joked about zoos was opening and closing his mouth but making no sound. Jake looked up at the royal boxes. He could not see the princess clearly from this distance, but he knew she was there. He knew she was watching. Emma's voice came through his earpiece. 45 seconds. New arena record for a Creth takedown. Jake turned and walked toward the exit gate. The crowd finally found their voices, but they were not laughing anymore. Some of them cheered. Others whispered to each other in confusion and fear. In her viewing box, Princess Lyra sat very still. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were shaking slightly. She had called this human weak. She had promised he would die in the first round. She had been wrong, and somewhere deep inside, she felt the first cold touch of fear. The news of Jake's victory spread through the Colosseum like fire. Within minutes, everyone was talking about the human who had defeated a Creth warrior in less than 1 minute. It was impossible. It should not have happened. But they had all seen it with their own eyes. Princess Lyra sat in her viewing box and listened to the whispers around her. The other nobles were looking at her with strange expressions. She had mocked the human publicly, She had promised he would die. Now she looked like a fool. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she refused to show it. She was a princess of the Valoran Empire. She would not let one lucky victory make her look weak. When Ambassador Ryan Torres walked into her viewing box an hour later, Lyra was ready for him. Ryan was 53 years old with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been Earth's ambassador to the Valoran Empire for 5 years. He knew how to talk to aliens. He knew how to smile even when he was angry. And right now, he was very angry about how the princess had treated his people. "Your Highness," Ryan said with a polite bow, "I hope you are enjoying the tournament." Lyra forced a smile. "It has been entertaining. Your human fighter performed better than I expected." "He performed exactly as I expected," Ryan replied calmly. "Jake Collins is one of the finest warriors Earth has ever produced. Your mistake was thinking otherwise." The nobles around Lyra gasped softly. No one spoke to a princess this way. But Ryan's smile never changed. He was an ambassador. He had immunity, and he knew exactly what he was doing. Lyra's eyes flashed with anger. One victory means nothing. He will fall in the next round, or the round after that. Humans are fragile creatures. Everyone knows this. Ryan tilted his head slightly. "Would you like to make that official, Your Highness?" The viewing box became very quiet. Everyone understood what the ambassador was suggesting. A wager. A public bet between Earth and the Valoran Empire. Lyra should have refused. Any smart person would have refused. But she was young and proud and still embarrassed from before. She wanted to prove that she was right about humans. She wanted to watch Jake Collins lose and say that she knew it would happen. "What do you propose?" she asked. Ryan smiled wider. "If Jake loses any match in this tournament, Earth will renegotiate all our trade agreements with the Valoran Empire. We will accept whatever terms you offer. You will get everything you want." Lyra's eyes lit up. The trade agreements were worth trillions of credits. Having full control over them would make her look brilliant to her mother. The embarrassment from earlier would be forgotten. "And if he wins?" she asked. "If Jake wins the entire tournament," Ryan said, "the Valoran Empire will grant humanity full recognition as a Tier 1 species. Equal status with the oldest civilizations in the galaxy." The nobles began whispering frantically. Tier 1 status was incredibly valuable. It would give humans full voting rights in the Galactic Concord. It would open trade routes that were currently closed to them. It would change everything. Lyra laughed. "You would risk so much on one human?" "I would," Ryan said. "Would you risk so much on your beliefs about us?" It was a challenge. Everyone in the room knew it. If Lyra refused now, she would look like a coward. She would look like she did not believe her own words about human weakness. She could not refuse. "I accept," Princess Lyra announced loudly. "Let the galaxy watch your human fail." Ryan bowed again. Let the galaxy watch him succeed. Within hours, the wager was broadcast across every news network in known space. Billions of beings learned about the bet between the Valoran princess and a human ambassador. Suddenly, a simple fighting tournament had become the most important event in galactic politics. Jake learned about the wager while preparing for his second match. Emma told him through the comlink, her voice tight with worry. "Ryan made a bet," she said. "Everything is riding on you now. Trade agreements, species status, everything." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Ryan trusts me. I won't let him down." "Jake, the pressure is just noise," Jake interrupted gently. "I've been in worse situations. Focus on the data. Tell me about my next opponent." Emma took a deep breath and became professional again. Morthian beast hunter. Fast and smart. Uses poison claws. One scratch and you'll be dead in 3 minutes. Jake nodded slowly. Then I won't let him scratch me. His second match lasted longer than the first. The Morthian was quick and clever. It tried to corner Jake, tried to force him into positions where escape was impossible. Its claws dripped with green poison that sizzled when it touched the arena floor. Jake fought differently this time. He was patient. He let the Morthian attack again and again while he studied its movements. The crowd thought he was losing. They cheered for the alien, waiting for the killing blow. It never came. After 12 minutes, Jake found his opening. The Morthian lunged too far, and Jake stepped inside its reach. His elbow struck the creature's throat with perfect precision. The Morthian collapsed, gasping for air. 2 victories. The galaxy watched in disbelief. The third match was against twin Sarkith assassins. They fought as one mind, communicating through telepathy. No opponent had ever beaten them. They moved in perfect harmony, attacking from opposite directions at the same time. Jake fought them for 37 minutes. He took hits. He bled. But he never stopped moving, never stopped thinking. He noticed that the twins always looked at each other before their combination attacks. A tiny glance, just a fraction of a second. He used that glance against them. When he saw them look at each other, he knew what was coming. On their 17th combination attack, Jake was already moving. He caught one twin with a kick that broke its leg. The other twin felt its brother's pain through their mental link. It hesitated for just a moment. That moment was enough. Jake finished the fight. Princess Lyra watched each victory from her viewing box. She no longer laughed. She no longer joked with her friends. Her friends had stopped coming. They did not want to be associated with her when she lost the wager. She sat alone now, watching the human win fight after fight. Each victory made her situation worse. The whispers in the court were growing louder. People said she had shamed the Empire. They said she had been foolish to bet against the human. Her mother would hear these whispers. Her mother heard everything. The fourth match was the worst for Lyra to watch. Jake fought a Golan siege breaker, a creature that had not lost a match in 40 years. The Golan was massive and brutal. It threw Jake across the arena 3 times. It broke 2 of his ribs with a single punch. But Jake kept getting up. Every time the Golan knocked him down, Jake stood again. Blood ran from cuts on his face. His breathing was painful and ragged. Any other fighter would have surrendered. Any sane person would have stayed down. Jake was not like other fighters. The match lasted 2 hours. Near the end, both fighters were exhausted. The Golan could barely lift its arms. Jake could barely stand. But Jake saw what the Golan could not see. He saw that the giant creature was done. It had nothing left. With the last of his strength, Jake attacked. 3 hits to the body, then 1 final strike to the head. The Golan fell and did not rise. The crowd went mad. They were cheering for the human now. They had watched him refuse to quit. They had watched him take punishment that should have killed him and keep fighting anyway. They did not understand how it was possible, but they could not deny what they saw. Jake stood in the center of the arena, swaying slightly. He was hurt badly, but he was still standing. He had won 4 matches. Only the final remained. That night, a messenger arrived at Princess Lyra's private chambers. The messenger carried a simple note with the imperial seal. The princess opened it with shaking hands. The note contained only 3 words in her mother's handwriting. Come home immediately. Lyra felt her heart turn to ice. The Empress had summoned her dot, and the Empress was not happy. The imperial palace stood at the heart of Valora Prime. It was ancient beyond measure. Built when humans were still living in caves on Earth, its towers reached toward the sky like silver fingers. Its walls were made of stone that glowed with inner light. For 3,000 years, the Valoran empresses had ruled the galaxy from this place. Princess Lyra walked through the great doors with her head down. Guards in golden armor stood along the walls, their faces hidden behind masks. None of them looked at her. None of them spoke. The silence was worse than any words could have been. The throne room was at the end of a long hallway. Each step Lyra took echoed off the high ceiling. She felt like she was walking to her own execution. In some ways, she was. Empress Thalia sat on the crystal throne. She was old, even by Valoran standards. Her hair was pure white, and her skin was so pale it was almost clear. Her silver eyes had seen civilizations rise and fall. She had ruled for 800 years. In all that time, she had never suffered fools. Lyra stopped 10 feet from the throne and dropped to her knees. She pressed her forehead to the cold floor in the traditional pose of submission. "Mother," she said, "you summoned me." The Empress did not respond immediately. She let the silence stretch until Lyra wanted to scream. Finally, after what felt like hours, she spoke. "Rise." Lyra stood, but she kept her eyes on the floor. She could not bring herself to look at her mother's face. "Look at me," the Empress commanded. Lyra forced her eyes up. What she saw made her stomach twist with fear. The Empress was not angry. She was disappointed. And disappointment from Empress Thalia was far worse than anger. "You have made us appear foolish," the Empress said. Her voice was soft but carried through the entire throne room. "You mocked a species you did not understand. You made a wager that could harm our empire. And you did all of this in public, where the entire galaxy could watch." Lyra's mouth was dry. "Mother, do not interrupt me." Lyra closed her mouth instantly. The Empress stood from her throne. She was tall and thin, and she moved with the grace of flowing water. She walked down the steps slowly, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. "Tell me," she said, "what do you know about humans?" Lyra swallowed hard. "They are a young species. They come from a small planet called Earth. They have only been part of the Galactic Concord for 3 years. They are physically weak compared to most other species. No claws, no armor, no natural weapons. And based on this information, you decided they were worthless." Yes, Mother. I thought they were weak." The Empress stopped directly in front of Lyra. She was only inches away now, close enough that Lyra could see the ancient wisdom in her silver eyes. "You thought wrong." Lyra felt tears forming in her eyes, but she fought them back. A princess did not cry, especially not in the throne room. "The humans," the Empress continued, "are not weak. They are terrifying." Lyra blinked in confusion. "Terrifying? Mother, how can that be? They have no natural advantages at all." The Empress smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a teacher who was about to explain something obvious to a foolish student. "Walk with me," she said. She turned and began walking toward a side door. Lyra followed quickly, her heart pounding in her chest. The Empress led her through several hallways until they reached a room Lyra had only visited once before. It was the Imperial Archive, where the secret histories of the galaxy were stored. The room was filled with floating screens that showed images and text. The Empress waved her hand, and the screens arranged themselves in front of them. "Our intelligence. Networks have studied humans for decades," the Empress said. "We knew about them long before they joined the Concord. We watched them from the shadows. What we saw was remarkable." The screens showed images of Earth. Lyra saw oceans and mountains and cities. She saw humans doing various things. Working, fighting, building. Humans evolved on a planet that was trying to kill them, the Empress explained. They survived ice ages that covered their world in frozen death. They survived asteroid impacts that destroyed most life on their planet. They survived volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, and diseases that could have ended them 100 times. The screens changed to show ancient humans fighting animals with simple weapons. The animals were massive and dangerous, but the humans did not run. Their planet was filled with predators stronger and faster than them. Any sensible species would have died. But humans did not die. They made weapons. They formed groups. They learned to think and plan. They hunted creatures 10 times their size and won. Lyra watched the images in growing disbelief. She had never thought about where humans came from. She had only looked at what they were now. And then, the Empress continued, when they ran out of predators to fight, they began fighting each other. The screen showed human wars. Lyra saw explosions and destruction on a massive scale. She saw weapons that could flatten cities. She saw humans killing each other by the millions. They have been at war with themselves for their entire existence, the Empress said. Generation after generation. They developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet, and they kept building them. Any other species would have destroyed themselves long ago. But humans survived. They always survive. Lyra felt cold. She was beginning to understand what her mother was telling her. The human in that arena, the Empress said softly, does not need to be stronger than his opponent. He does not need to be faster or bigger or better armed. He only needs to survive long enough to find a way to win. And daughter, let me be clear about this. Humans always find a way. The screen showed images of Jake's fights. Lyra watched him dodge attacks that should have killed him. She watched him get knocked down and stand back up again and again. She watched him study his opponents until he found their weaknesses. They heal from wounds that would kill most species, the Empress continued. Their bones break and repair themselves stronger than before. They can lose blood that would be fatal to a Valoran and keep fighting. They feel pain, but they can ignore it through sheer will. And their minds never stop working, never stop searching for advantage. Lyra's knees felt weak. She had called these creatures weak. She had laughed at them in front of the entire galaxy. We have ruled for 3,000 years because we understand power, the Empress said. True power is not about size or strength. It is about refusing to die. It is about adapting and surviving no matter what the universe throws at you. By that measure, humans are one of the most powerful species we have ever encountered. The Empress waved her hand, and the screens disappeared. She turned to face her daughter with a hard expression. You made a wager that you will lose, she said. The human will win this tournament. I am certain of it. And when he does, you will pay the price for your arrogance. Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. What would you have me do, Mother? The Empress walked back toward the throne room, and Lyra followed with heavy feet. You will return to the Colosseum, the Empress said. You will watch the final match. And, when the human wins, you will walk down to the arena floor and apologize to him personally. In front of the entire Galactic Concord. In front of billions of watching eyes. Lyra felt like she had been struck. A public apology was the greatest humiliation possible for a Valoran noble. She would be admitting that she was wrong. She would be bowing before a human. Mother, please. This is not a request. The Empress's voice turned to ice. You will learn humility, daughter. You will learn to respect your enemies before you mock them. Or you will learn nothing at all, and you will never sit on the crystal throne after I am gone. The threat hung in the air between them. Lyra understood. Her position as heir was not guaranteed. If she did not prove herself worthy, her mother would choose someone else. I understand, Mother, Lyra said quietly. Good. The Empress sat back on her throne and looked down at her daughter. Now go. The final match is tomorrow. Prepare yourself for what you must do. Lyra bowed deeply and walked out of the throne room. Her mind was spinning with everything she had learned. She had been so confident that she understood humans. She had been so sure they were weak. She had been a fool. And tomorrow, the entire galaxy would watch her admit it. The morning of the final match arrived with the whole galaxy watching. More than 10 billion beings tuned into the broadcast. Every species, every planet, every station in known space had stopped to see what would happen. The human fighter had become the most famous person in the universe overnight. Jake sat in his preparation room, getting his wounds from yesterday treated by medical machines. His ribs were wrapped tight. His cuts had been sealed with healing gel. He was hurt, but he could still fight. He could always still fight. Emma's voice came through the speaker. "Jake, we need to talk about your opponent. I'm listening." "It's General Kale." Jake stopped moving. He knew that name. Everyone knew that name. General Kale was the commander of the Imperial Guard, the most elite military force in the Valoran Empire. He had served the Empress for 700 years. He was a legend. Why is he fighting? Jake asked quietly. "The Empress ordered it," Emma replied. "This isn't like your other matches, Jake. Kale isn't fighting to win. He's fighting to learn. The Empress wants to understand humans. She's using you as a test subject." Jake considered this for a moment. A fighter who wanted to learn was more dangerous than a fighter who wanted to win. A fighter who wanted to learn would be patient. He would probe and test. He would not make the same mistakes as the others. "What else do we know about him?" Emma's voice became serious. 700 years of combat experience. Trained in every known fighting style. He's never lost a match in recorded history. He's killed opponents from every major species. His speed and strength are far beyond normal Valoran levels. Jake finished wrapping his hands. "Anything else?" "Yes. He's smart, Jake. Really smart. He'll figure out your patterns faster than anyone you faced. The longer the fight goes, the more dangerous he becomes." Jake stood up and stretched carefully. His ribs screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain. Pain was just information. It told him where his body was damaged. It did not control what he could do. "Then I'll just have to be smarter," he said. The arena was packed beyond capacity. Every seat was filled. Aliens stood in the aisles and crowded against the railings. The air itself seemed to vibrate with excitement and tension. Princess Lyra sat in the royal box, alone except for 2 guards. She had not slept at all the night before. Her mother's words kept repeating in her mind. Humans always find a way. You will apologize. You will learn humility. She looked down at the arena floor and waited for the fighters to appear. The crowd roared when General Kale entered from the east gate. He was tall and powerful, with skin the color of polished steel. His eyes were gold, and they missed nothing. He wore simple fighting clothes and carried no weapons. He did not need them. His body was the weapon. The roar became even louder when Jake entered from the west gate. He was small compared to the general. His body was covered with bandages and bruises from his previous fights. He looked like he should be in a hospital, not an arena. But his eyes were clear and focused. He showed no fear. The 2 fighters walked to the center of the arena and faced each other. For a moment, they just looked. Kale studied the human with professional interest. Jake studied the general the same way. You have impressed the Empress, Kale said. His voice was deep and calm. She wishes to understand your species better. Jake nodded slightly. And you're here to help her understand. Yes, I will test you thoroughly. I will push you to your limits and beyond. I want to see what humans can truly do. Jake took a slow breath. Then let's find out together. The horn sounded. Kale did not charge like the other opponents. He moved forward carefully, keeping perfect balance at all times. His first punch came fast, faster than anything Jake had seen in the tournament. It took everything Jake had to dodge it. The second punch came even faster. Jake barely moved in time. The third punch clipped his shoulder and sent pain shooting down his arm. He's testing my speed, Jake thought. Learning how fast I can react, Jake tried to counterattack, but Kale was already gone. The general moved like smoke, flowing from position to position without seeming to try. He struck Jake twice more in the next few seconds, each hit precisely placed to cause pain without ending the fight. The crowd watched in tense silence. This was different from the other matches. This was not a brawl. This was two masters testing each other. The first hour passed with neither fighter gaining a clear advantage. Jake was faster than Kale expected. His reflexes were extraordinary for a human. But Kale was adjusting, learning, getting closer with each exchange. Jake noticed that his opponent was studying him. Every move Jake made was being analyzed and remembered. If he used the same technique twice, Kale was ready for it the second time. So Jake stopped repeating himself. He changed his style constantly, mixing techniques from different fighting systems, doing things that made no tactical sense, just to keep Kale guessing. The second hour was brutal. Both fighters were sweating and breathing hard. Jake had taken dozens of hits. His left arm was broken, hanging uselessly at his side. 3 more ribs had cracked. Blood dripped from cuts on his face and body. But he was still standing. He was still fighting. Princess Lyra leaned forward in her seat, unable to look away. The human should have collapsed long ago. The damage to his body was severe. Any Valoran warrior would have surrendered by now. But Jake kept moving. He kept attacking. He kept refusing to fall. Kale's gold eyes showed something new. Respect. He had fought thousands of opponents in his long life, but he had never seen anything like this. The human was running on pure will. "You are remarkable," Kale said between exchanges. "Your body is failing, but your spirit is not." Jake spat blood onto the white stone floor. "This is what we do. This is what humans have always done. We keep fighting, even when you cannot win. Especially then." The third hour began. Jake was operating on instinct now, his conscious mind too tired to keep up. His body moved on its own, guided by years of training and combat experience. He blocked attacks he did not see coming. He dodged strikes that should have been impossible to avoid. Emma watched from the control station with tears in her eyes. She wanted to tell Jake to stop. She wanted to beg him to surrender before he died. But she knew he would not listen. She knew he could not stop. This was who he was. Kale increased his speed, pushing harder than before. He wanted to see what would happen when the human had nothing left. He wanted to know how humans face the end. Jake's vision was getting dark at the edges. His lungs burned with each breath. His broken arm was sending waves of agony through his entire body. He knew he could not last much longer, but he also knew something else. He had been watching Kale for nearly 3 hours. He had seen thousands of movements, thousands of patterns. And buried deep in all that data, he had found something. A flaw. It was tiny, almost invisible. A half-second hesitation that happened every time Kale prepared his most powerful combination. It was so small that no one would notice it in a normal fight. But this was not a normal fight. This had been 3 hours of the most intense observation Jake had ever done. He waited. His body screamed for rest. His mind begged him to quit. But he waited. Kale prepared his combination. And there it was. The hesitation. Jake moved. He had one chance. One moment. Everything he had left went into this single attack. His right fist drove forward with perfect accuracy. It caught Kale in the center of his chest, exactly where the Valoran heart was located. The impact was precise and devastating. General Kale dropped to one knee. The arena went completely silent. No one breathed. No one moved. Kale looked up at the human standing over him. Blood ran from Jake's nose and mouth. His legs were shaking. He could barely keep himself upright. But he had done it. He had found a way. Remarkable, Kale whispered. Then, for the first time in 700 years, General Kale yielded. The silence lasted for 3 full seconds. Then the crowd exploded with noise. The sound was like a physical force, washing over the arena in waves. Aliens were screaming, cheering, stomping their feet. They had seen something impossible. They had seen a human defeat the greatest warrior in the Valoran Empire. Jake stood in the center of it all, swaying on his feet. Emma was shouting in his ear, crying and laughing at the same time, but he could barely hear her. The world seemed very far away. He had won. Against all odds, against all expectations, against everything the galaxy believed about his species. He had won. In the royal box, Princess Lyra sat frozen. Her silver eyes were wide. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair so hard that her knuckles had turned white. She had called this human weak. She had mocked him. She had bet against him. And tomorrow, she would kneel before him and admit she was wrong. The victory ceremony was the grandest event the Grand Colosseum had ever hosted. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Concord had come to witness history. Thousands of diplomats, generals, scientists, and leaders filled the special viewing areas. Billions more watched through broadcast networks across the galaxy. The arena floor had been transformed. The white stone was now covered with golden carpet. Banners from 100 worlds hung from the ceiling. Music played from invisible speakers, filling the air with sounds of celebration. Jake stood on the champion's platform in the center of it all. He was clean now, wearing simple formal clothes that Emma had found for him. His wounds were still healing, wrapped in white bandages that showed through his shirt. His left arm was in a support device that kept it still while the bone mended. He looked out at the massive crowd and felt strange. 24 hours ago, he had been fighting for his life. Now he was being treated like a king. Emma stood nearby, watching everything with protective eyes. She had barely let Jake out of her sight since the match ended. She was proud of him, prouder than she could ever express. But she was also worried. He had pushed his body too far. The doctor said he needed months of rest. But today was not about rest. Today was about something bigger than one man's health. Ambassador Ryan Torres stood with the human delegation, smiling broadly. The trade agreements were already being prepared. Tomorrow, humanity would officially become a Tier 1 species. Everything Earth had worked for since joining the Galactic. Concord was finally happening. And it was all because of Jake. The crowd fell silent, as well as silent. As was all because of Jake. The crowd fell silent, as Kazine. Empress Thalia appeared on a raised platform overlooking the arena. She was dressed in white and silver, her ancient face showing no emotion. Behind her stood General Kale, fully recovered from his defeat. He showed no shame at having lost. If anything, he looked pleased. The Empress raised her hand, and all sound in the Colosseum stopped completely. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the massive structure. "We have gathered here to honor a champion," she said. "A warrior who has proven himself against the finest fighters in the galaxy. A representative of a species that we did not understand until now." She paused and looked directly at Jake. Her silver eyes seemed to see right through him. "Human," she continued, "you have earned something that cannot be bought or stolen. You have earned the respect of the Valoran Empire. You have shown us what your people can do when pushed to the limit. We will not forget this lesson." Jake bowed his head slightly in acknowledgement. He did not trust his voice to speak. The Empress began walking down from her platform. The crowd murmured in surprise. It was extremely rare for an Empress to leave her elevated position during a ceremony. But Thalia walked with purpose, her guards following at a respectful distance. She stopped directly in front of Jake and looked up at him on the champion's platform. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two representatives of their species, facing each other across the gap of culture and history. "We underestimated your people," the Empress said quietly, so only Jake could hear. "We saw your physical forms and assumed you were weak. We were wrong. Strength comes in many forms, and yours may be the most dangerous of all." Jake finally found his voice. "We don't want to be dangerous, Your Majesty. We just want a chance to prove ourselves." The Empress smiled slightly. "You have proven more than enough. The galaxy will remember this day for 1,000 years." She stepped back and raised her voice so everyone could hear again. "And now, as promised, there is a debt to be paid." The crowd's attention shifted to a side entrance. Princess Lyra appeared, walking slowly onto the arena floor. She wore a simple dress without any jewels or decoration. Her face was pale, but she held her head high. Every step she took was broadcast across the galaxy. Every being watching knew what was happening. The proud princess who had mocked the human was about to humble herself. Before him, Lyra stopped at the base of the champion's platform. She looked up at Jake, and he could see the conflict in her silver eyes. She did not want to do this. Every part of her resisted. But she had been commanded by her mother, and she would obey. Slowly, she lowered herself to one knee. Then she bent forward, pressing her hands to the golden carpet in the deepest gesture of respect a Valoran could give. "I mocked you without understanding," Lyra said, her voice carrying through the silent arena. "I judged your species by the limits I expected, not by the potential you carried. I was wrong." She looked up at Jake, her eyes meeting his. "I offer my apology to you, champion, and to all of humanity. I hope that you can forgive my ignorance." The moment stretched out. The entire galaxy held its breath, waiting to see how the human would respond. Jake looked down at the kneeling princess. He could feel the weight of the moment. He could choose to humiliate her further. He could make her suffer for her mockery. No one would blame him, but that was not who he was. Jake stepped down from the platform and extended his hand toward Lyra. It was a human gesture of peace and acceptance, one that he knew she had studied, but probably never expected to receive. "We're not enemies," Jake said gently. "We never were. Your people have lived among the stars for thousands of years. Mine just got here. We have a lot to learn from each other." Lyra stared at his hand for a long moment. Her training told her that accepting help from someone she had wronged was another form of submission. But something in Jake's eyes made her pause. There was no cruelty there, no desire for revenge. Just genuine kindness from one person to another. She took his hand and let him help her to her feet. The arena erupted with cheers. The sound was overwhelming, coming from every direction at once. Humans and aliens alike were applauding, celebrating not just a victory in combat, but something more important. A bridge between species. A moment of understanding. Emma wiped tears from her eyes as she watched from the side. 3 years ago, no one in the galaxy knew Earth existed. Today, a human stood as champion of the greatest arena in known space, and a princess had knelt before him in apology. Ambassador Ryan Torres was already thinking about the future. The trade agreements were just the beginning. Humanity had proven itself worthy of respect. Now they had to prove they could use that respect wisely. General Kale approached Jake after the formal ceremony ended. The crowd was beginning to disperse, but many people lingered to watch what would happen next. "You fought well," Kale said simply. "Better than anyone I have faced in centuries." Jake nodded, feeling the exhaustion in every part of his body. "You nearly killed me." "Several times." Kale smiled slightly. It was an unusual expression on his stern face. "You survived. That is what matters." He paused. "I would like to train with you, human. Not as teacher and student, as equals. I believe we could learn much from each other." Jake considered this for a moment. Then he smiled and extended his hand again. "I'd like that." Cale took the hand and shook it firmly. Another bridge built. Another connection made. Princess Lyra watched from a distance. Her public humiliation was over, but she did not feel as terrible as she had expected. The human had been kind to her. He had not gloated or demanded more suffering. He had simply offered peace. She thought about what her mother had told her about humans. They kept fighting even when logic demanded surrender. They found ways to win when victory seemed impossible. They survived against all odds. But there was something else about them that her mother had not mentioned. They also knew how to forgive. They knew how to build instead of destroy. They knew how to turn enemies into friends. Perhaps that was their greatest strength of all. Lyra made a decision. She would ask her mother for permission to learn more about humans. Not from intelligence reports and observations, but from actual interaction. If humanity was going to be part of the galaxy's future, she needed to understand them properly. She would not make the same mistake twice. As the ceremony wound down and the crowds began to leave, Jake found himself alone on the arena floor. The golden carpet was being rolled up. The banners were being taken down. Tomorrow this place would host another tournament, and new fighters would shed blood on the white stone. But tonight, everything was different. Tonight, humanity had a champion. Tonight, the galaxy knew that the small, fragile creatures from Earth were not to be underestimated. Emma approached him with a tired smile. "Ready to go home?" Jake looked around the arena one last time. He thought about all the fights he had survived, all the pain he had endured, all the times he had wanted to quit but kept going anyway. "Yeah," he said finally. "But something tells me this is just the beginning." Emma laughed and put her arm around his shoulders, careful to avoid his injuries. "When is it ever anything else with you?" They walked out of the arena together, leaving the empty Colosseum behind. Above them, the stars spread across the darkness of space like scattered diamonds. Somewhere out there was Earth, the small blue planet where humanity had learned to survive. And somewhere in the future, humanity would do more than survive. They would thrive. They would explore. They would build relationships with species across the galaxy. All because one man had refused to stay. Down. Jake Collins smiled and kept walking. His body was broken, but his spirit was stronger than ever. The galaxy had learned a lesson today about humanity, and they would never forget it.